It's widely acknowledged that left-handed batters in Major League Baseball generally outperform their right-handed counterparts. Throughout the history of baseball, there have been numerous highly renowned left-handed batters, with figures like Ted Williams, Babe Ruth, and Lou Gehrig standing out prominently. Alongside this, it's commonly known that the common baseball bat can be used as a deadly two-handed weapon. The two-handedness of the common baseball bat of course means it lies in a weapon continuum alongside the common sword, and thus raises a simple question. Did left-handed swordsmen have an advantage on the battlefield? It is possible that left-handed swordsmen may have had an advantage on the battlefield in certain situations. However, it is important to note that being left-handed would not automatically make someone a better swordsman. Many other factors such as skill, training, strength, and tactics would also play a role in a swordsman's ability to succeed on the battlefield. Theoretically, left-handed warriors may have had an edge in ancient combat, but not for the same reasons that left-handed baseball players may have. Superior swordsmanship did not determine the victory of ancient conflicts, nor did the skill of one man determine the fate of a conflict. These fights had numerous warriors fighting in formation in vast numbers. Given this, the main distinction between a left-handed warrior and the more typical right-handed warrior would have been the way they carried their shield. Everyone was assumed to be right-handed while in formation for marches and battles. They would be arranged side by side to form an uninterrupted front, with each person providing the same type of protection for himself and the soldiers around him. However, the ancient Greeks were well aware that this transmitted each man's vulnerability to the entire formation. For each man, when he marched, one of his flanks was protected while the other was not. Every infantry formation had a naked side, as each soldier carried his shield on his left arm. An army in motion could not successfully defend itself from attacks coming from the right, since all of its shields were on the opposing side. They would need to halt, turn around to face their attackers, and remain stationary until the enemy was driven off in order to avoid exposing their naked side once more. This is necessary to deflect even a basic barrage of arrows or javelins from hidden assailants. The right side of the formation was particularly vulnerable to flanking attacks in battle as well, since there was no way for individual fighters to defend themselves on that side without jeopardizing their formation. Fortresses and city walls were built to take advantage of this weakness. The city gates were the most vulnerable areas of assault in these defenses. Hence, many of them were positioned perpendicular to the wall, facing left when seen from within the city. As a result, the enemy was forced to turn left in order to approach them, exposing their right flank to wall defenders. A typical addition to this defense was to extend the wall past the gate to create a passageway that the enemy would have to squeeze through, while maintaining their unprotected right facing the city the entire time. Many defended locations would be built in such a way that anyone attempting to enter the gate would be forced to spend as much time as possible with his shield uselessly pointing outward, leaving his naked side vulnerable to assault. Therefore, in principle, a left-handed fighter may really have an edge, whether they are on the march, engaged in close combat, or launching siege assaults. There would have been several situations where a hypothetical group of soldiers with shields on their right arms may have aided in defending the entire army. However, such units were never made. Left-handedness as a tactical advantage was never raised, let alone discussed, and it is certainly assumed that all warriors are right-handed. Nevertheless, there are a few rare instances throughout history when it is described, one of which is in the biblical book of Judges, where the Israelites establish a unit of 700 left-handed swordsmen. However, according to Judges' description, these men were solely noteworthy for being excellent slingers. There is no mention of what these troops accomplished during these fights, or even the rationale behind the formation of their unique organisation. There are a few clear reasons why people might not be motivated to pursue the notion. An army of right-handed soldiers would be most vulnerable when on the march. But how could one team of southpaws make up for this? You couldn't just add a whole extra unit along the width of the road. Marching columns had to be as broad as the road they were marching on. In any scenario, only a small portion of the army column would be covered, as you wouldn't have enough left-handed fighters to create a unit that was as long as the whole army column. The alternative would be to spread the unit out throughout the whole column in a single file, which may protect it with its shields, but would prevent the troops from working together as a team. If a crisis arose, it may take them hours to physically gather themselves into a fighting formation. In other words, either you disperse the men to the extent that their presence becomes a logistical problem, or you swarm them in a way that prevents them from doing the majority of the jobs that have been given to them. It may have been possible to assemble a group of left-handed soldiers to guard the right flank during combat, if the correct incentives were given to them. You might even be able to persuade them to lead the attack on any city gate that required a left turn. But in truth, nothing like this has ever been tried. Most likely, the selection procedure for such a unit would make it excessively laborious. In any event, the biggest barrier to the development of these units was likely the widespread social shame associated with left-handedness in many ancient communities. Any notion of such a unit may have been put to rest due to the connection of the left with wicked, crooked, and evil things. For example, the English term sinister originates from a Latin word meaning left. Thus, to conclude, it appears that all soldiers in the ancient Mediterranean region held their shields with their left hand and battled with their right. This has been me, Jack, and if you're left-handed, shout out to you.